All right, it's 6 o'clock, so we will call this meeting on February 11th, 2025 to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And next, we'll move to Town Manager's comments.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Pate, members of the public, council members. Relatively short agenda this evening. It's all on one side of a page, close to it. Your consent agenda this evening includes minutes from January, in addition to the resolution discussed at the last work session requesting that the NC General Assembly amend North Carolina General Statute 113A-66, the NC Sedimentation Pollution Control Act. You have a legislative public hearing on a voluntary annexation, and then a QJ hearing on a major subdivision preliminary plat. Beyond that, planning staff has brought back the amendment to the Code of Ordinances regarding the use of skateboards, per the discussion that took place at the work session, amending that language that was before you then to take into account the block around the downtown park, in addition to some age restrictions that were discussed at the meeting. And then finally, you have two planning board vacancies currently, one being in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, and the second as a result of Mr. Rick Herrera stepping down from the board. Certainly thank him for his service, but you do have two vacancies and some candidates to choose from this evening, should you choose to appoint. Be happy to take any questions.
Just for
Mayor Pro Tem?
clarification,
Yes.
my understanding is that the January 14th minutes are not in here, so that will not be part of the consent.
Okay,
Is that correct, Beth?
thank you.
And then you mentioned the erosion control. Where is that going to fall in here?
That is under your consent agenda, item B, 5B, Resolution 1107.
Oh, I don't have a copy. We don't have that.
Yeah, ours doesn't have that one on it. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, I'll share with the town manager, yes.
Yeah. All right. No, good. You're fine. So knowing that 5B is the erosion control aspect on the consent agenda, and that the January 14 minutes are not part of the consent agenda.
Is it?
Erosion control was in here, because I remember reading it.
Oh, it was in the packet.
It was in the
It's
packet.
in the packet.
I have it in mine, nor do I have a 5B.
Consent agenda 5B, Resolution 1107.
Don't have it.
I printed this straight out of the packet, and it's on my sheet. That's,
It's got to be before that, right?
Yeah, it's got to be before that, so all I have is this. Do you have it pulled up there? I'd actually prefer to see it before I was asked to consent to it. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, I don't see it on the Dropbox. I actually pulled it up earlier today on Civic Clerk when I was reading it.
You're sending that to them.
if you wish to move to the public hearings, and we could come back and adopt the consent agenda at the
So
end.
do-
Give Beth a chance to get that sent to you.
Could we?
You could review it.
So I would, do you want me to make a motion already regarding the consent agenda minus the 5B?
No, tell you what, let's get a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay.
And then we will not do consent motion yet. We'll move to public comment, and then we'll go back.
That sounds
once we see it.
lovely. Okay, I'd make a motion that we approve the agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, agenda is approved. We're going to shift forward to public comments, and then we'll come back after we find what Beth sends us. There's two folks, Carla Butler and Margaret George, are signed up for public comments. So. And just a reminder, this is 3 minutes, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
This is about Nowood Heights, and I understand the need for work.
And just, sorry, remind us your name and address, please.
Carla Butler, 325 Crest Road.
If you could speak into the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Carla Butler, 325 Crest Road. And I'm coming here tonight because I wanted to put before you something that's happening in Norwood Heights. It doesn't affect me personally because I'm not on the sewer line that seems to affect most people. But there are people who've experienced problems in the neighborhood and required cleanouts by the city. And most recently, a number of the trees have been marked for removal along the roads in Norwood Heights. And I'm concerned about the collateral damage to the houses that have not had problems reported. And so I wonder if there was any way that the city could consider more selective removal.
If I may address it, I just spoke with Engineer Mickle about this about an hour and a half before this meeting. The marking that is taking place right now and what is occurring, you will recall as part of the current fiscal year that we're in, we discussed at the retreat 3 pretty sizable projects, one of which has been occurring over in the Longleaf neighborhood over the past couple of weeks. What's occurring in Norwood Heights, and as Ms. Butler correctly said, that is an area that we've had some sewer overflows and tree infiltrations and issues. There are easements and in particular right-of-ways where trees have grown in over and on top of and through sewer lines. The marking that is currently occurring does not necessarily represent every tree that would ultimately be taken out. But what's occurring at the moment is actually, it's a budget process. We're out there marking the areas. There's a survey that's going to have to take place because it is right-of-ways that are involved in many cases. So some things that get marked, depending on where that right-of-way ends, may get moved a little bit, and some trees left. But what's essentially occurring right now is a potential counting process for purposes of getting estimates, so that when we come back to you in a couple of months with the budget, there will be additional tree clearings as part of the sewer maintenance project. This is one of the areas that has been targeted for that due to history. So I can't speak to exactly how many trees are going to come out because this is actually the first phase of the project. There were notifications that Mr. Oslin sent out and a code red that went out, and that's how many of the neighbors knew the markings were going to be taking place and such. But everything that is being marked should ultimately, everything being marked will lie within 10 feet of the location of those sewer lines. But again, because a lot of them are right-of-ways and not dedicated easements, it may shift a little bit once we get a survey done and we take a look at that.
So you said it and they, and I'm a little unclear in 2 different sentences. What shifts? I understand rights of way and the fact that we need to be cognizant of that. What are you talking about shifting the?
What I'm saying is once it is surveyed and the right-of-way is determined, because not all roads ultimately got laid in right in the center of the right-of-way,
Right?
it may move some of that. So there may be some trees that get marked that don't come out. But again, the markings that are there now are not, I guess, final is the best way I can put that. Where
It is marked is not about to meet its demise, is what you're telling me.
no, but
And-
may very well as part of a project next year. I want to be clear about that.
Notice to the neighbors as far as the ones that are actually.
Moves forward and everything, yes.
As far as
Yes.
the ones that are actually going to be removed. And how do we assess whether or not a tree is in a sewer line? How does that happen? Does a camera do that for us? We bought a camera.
As far as whether a tree is already there, yes, we will check the lines, et cetera. Now, of course, the goal is to not have trees actually ever infiltrate them and cause the problem in the first place. So, yes.
But then, how do we know, when you're saying we're going to remove things because they're a problem with the line now?
I'm
How
saying
do-
that is a general area in a neighborhood where there have been isolated incidents and things, so it is on sort of the list of areas that are being looked at to just go and, which generally is representative of the trees that are there are of an age where those root systems are either getting into the lines or getting very close to getting into the lines.
One of the things that's interesting about the longleaf pine is the major root is a taproot. But there are small roots that come out about 7 or 8 feet for the first 7 or 8 feet of the tree system. The concern was, we weren't sure from the edge of the road to what point. Is that 10 feet?
I would not say from the edge of the road. Generally, there is an easement on 10 feet on either side of where the sewer line lies, but that's what I'm saying about getting a survey done of where the right-of-way is, because it might be easy to say, there's 24 feet of asphalt there, the right-of-way was 40 feet, but a lot of times those roads, when they were laid in, were not laid in right in the center of the right-of-way. So that's where the survey comes into place to determine just exactly where that lies.
And for,
If you drive through Knollwood Heights, if you drive down Crest Road or Fairway or any of the roads there, I would urge you to do that and just see how many yellow spray paint markings there are, because it's taking a huge swath of the trees out. And the circle that's in the center, which is a wooded area, most of that is marked to come out, if you come and look at it. So as I say, I'm not personally affected with where we live.
Right.
But we have lots of neighbors who are really upset. So thank you for listening to me tonight.
thank you,
I
appreciate it.
your
And
attention.
moving forward, if they have continued questions, which is it, who should they reach out to if they did have a question?
I know both James and Ron East have been taking any number of questions on that project this week.
Circle is on, at the end, when you turn on Crest, that's the circle you're talking about?
Yeah, you come down Crest past, coming from Midland Road. Yeah. If you drive down Crest, you'll come to a circle with 5 exits off that circle. And if you drive through that area, almost all those trees are going to be coming out. And that's, sort of an iconic
For sure.
feature of that neighborhood.
Again, thank you. All right. Ms. George? We got one more.
My name is Margaret George, and I live at 355 Fairway Drive. And unlike Carla and Mrs. Butler, I am directly affected by this. They've marked about 7 trees at the front of my property. I did talk to Ron East today, and he explained there's 3 phases to this project. And one is replacing the sewer caps. The Knollwood Heights neighborhood, the original homes in that neighborhood were built in the 1920s. A lot of the sewer lines in that neighborhood are clay, made out of terracotta. And they've been lined before. They've had issues with it before. But before, they never took down trees in order to line the sewer lines. He said that this time, they will not be digging up anything unless they absolutely have to, because that will create an increased expense. But they will be lining the lines that are already there, just like they've done before. So some of the confusion is about, if in the past, they've never had to take out these trees, why now? Why are we taking out these trees? Because I measured one of mine in the rain today. One right in the front is close to my mailbox, and it's 19 inches across. So I know that tree's been there when the sewer lines were put there before. So why are we taking out trees that aren't necessarily impacting the sewer lines? I understand that the sewer lines have to be maintained, that there's issues with them there, but I don't understand the extent.
It really comes down to the preventative maintenance of making sure they don't impact the sewer lines.
But if they're 100 years old, at this point, are they going to impact, their taproot's going to be deep enough that most of those trees seem to get their water source from their taproot, and Our property is very sandy, it's definitely sand hills, and, you know, the tap roots are going down as much as 15 or 20 feet. So they're using the water table underneath the ground, you know, lower underneath the ground to get to their water source. They're not using, he implied that maybe that they were breaking into the sewer lines and that they were larger because they were getting nutrients out of the sewer lines in order to grow. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like there could be a compromise and maybe be a more directed type of sewer line improvement than just taking all the trees down and lining it.
Well, and I understand where you're coming from on that, but the lining is the improvement to the existing pipe. The taking down of the trees is the preventative measure to protect the pipe moving forward.
Well, but is it necessary? I mean, if we've been using the sewer system for 100 years, basically, I mean, not all the houses in, several of them were built
Right, right.
more recently than that, but I don't know. Is that really truly necessary? Especially some of the larger trees. Almost everything they're taking down is longleaf pine. They are taking down some hollies and some, there's a camellia or two that's been marked in my yard and some other trees like that. But it seems to me that the shallower trees tend to spread out their root systems more than the longleaf pines directly do, just because of the nature of the tree.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one other.
Yeah.
Actually, I love living in Southern Pines. I've been here since 2017. I think it's extremely well managed. I applaud your vision on buying the Whitehall property, which is close to us, and what you're doing with us. That's excellent. But I do have one complaint. At some point, somebody complained about the city-owned property at the corner of Serpentine and Fairway Drive. Fairway Drive is one of the easiest ways to get through the neighborhood. And I don't know if it was right around the US Open or what was going on, but that property, somebody came in and cleaned, I don't know if it was city or if they contracted to clean out the property, but somebody came in and partially cleaned out the property, left tree stumps and pine trees lying on the ground, logs lying on the ground, and just let it grow over with overgrowth again. And right now, it's kind of an eyesight and a hazard. There was a lot of ivy and wisteria and all sorts of stuff. They left the vines hanging in the trees to rot and fall out, which if they can't get them all down, I understand that. But there was a old dog run that somebody constructed in there. Let's see. You see it?
Are these pictures up to date? Do they reflect what the neighborhood looks like? Yeah.
May of 2024, it's a little older.
They were already down by May of 2024. You haven't? Okay. This property, you see this is dead vines hanging out of the trees. But all through here, there's a stump they left right here, and then all through here, there's one of the trees that are still down. There's several trees still down, and there was a dog run right in here. And you can kind of see the post, and there's old wire fencing in there, and they left that as well.
Do you mind showing us on this map too, that we can see, in this picture that we can see?
Okay. There's a ditch right here that runs through the property. A storm drain. And then this is what was in some of the trees. There's some back in here that you can't really see. And it's much more overgrown than this right now. Last summer, all sorts of stuff popped up in here. There's a dead tree stump here. The fencing for the dog run was right in here. I believe these neighbors, I'm not even sure it was them, because I'm not sure, the dog run looks pretty old. It's right in here. And then there's a log down here. There's actually another log down right in here now. And there's some back in here. So it kind of got cleaned up, but it seemed like it wasn't completed.
Thanks. So may I ask a follow-up question to the town manager? Is it our intent to take down every tree that's in all rights of way?
No. Trees that are in rights of way that happen to be within sewer line,
When you say
Easements.
within sewer line, how far within?
10 feet on either side of the sewer line.
So 20-foot track.
That's a typical easement, yes.
We're going to clear 20 feet of trees everywhere there's a sewer line.
I won't say everywhere there is a sewer line, but yes, in many areas where there is heavy tree growth and potential for, because what occurs, and I absolutely understand if somebody hasn't had a problem, but the problem when it occurs involves the sewer backing up into the home.
Right.
And that becomes, as you can imagine, quite an issue. So it's just to try to prevent those types of situations or worse situations where we actually get spills and things end up in the creek. And Mr. Smith has spoken to the council quite a bit about that with the Warrior Woods area in the past. So it's simply, it's preventative maintenance. It's to try to keep out of trouble with the state and keep out of environmental issues and basically keep the sewer out of homes.
So if people have a sewer line coming down the front of their house, they need to bank on a 20-foot swath with no trees in it. That's going to be our preventative measure.
I would guess that some of that is in the road,
It is.
So it'd be-
We're talking right of way, yeah.
so I mean, it wouldn't, in every case,
So
it
it'll
would
be-
be 20 feet. Some places it could be 5, some would be
And it's
9.
sitting 2 feet off of the road, then at least in that direction, it's already asphalt.
Right. But in areas where it traverses through,
Overgrown areas or
Yeah,
natural
it's gonna-
areas, and yeah. And again, the 20 feet through those areas is of the particular importance, not just because of infiltration of the lines, but just being able to access the line.
into it.
That's what I mean by access, yes, yeah.
I must be missing something here. Are you saying 20 feet from the edge of the road?
No.
Oh, 20 feet on top?
No.
20 feet.
This is your line 10 feet in either side, and part of this 10 feet may be road already, so.
Policy of the town in the past?
I will defer to the attorney on this, but that is a pretty standard size easement. Part of the problem in the past is that the town has gone through and done projects like linings, which occur because problems have occurred, and then not taken care of the source of the problem, which has been the trees.
Have there been linings done on PVC lines rather than terracotta lines? Or have all the linings thus far that have been done on terracotta
I would
lines?
honestly have to go back and ask that question, but I would make an educated guess that many of the lines that are getting, these will tend to happen sort of in a descending order of age. And the
Right.
older lines were clearly not PVC, so we're still working through a lot of clay and
But when there was a line through a residential area, not far from Bethesda, and there was a major protest from both neighbors on either side of that, all of a sudden, we were okay with a 10-foot easement as to our easement that we needed to protect the line. Does that make sense? I mean, why do we need 10 feet there and then suddenly 20 feet? 20 feet's a lot.
I can only imagine that is a scenario that I think Mr. McCarley was involved with Mike Cameron on, and I think they worked something out with the property owner because it involved an easement through private property. Again, what we're looking at with this project, for the most part, are not easements through private property. They're right-of-ways along
Correct.
roadways. And again, allowing 10 feet there, I would suggest is likely to be a function of both the ability to access it. So it may have been near a roadway already where getting equipment through is not an issue or anything.
Between two properties, and in that case, 10 feet was enough in order to have a preventative measure.
It wasn't really enough, but
And I think part of the agreement was if it ever has to be accessed, that stuff's gone.
yes, sir, that's a more accurate description.
I think maybe some acceptance of liability in the event that it did back up into a home or something, because
We made it very plain to them what the potential consequences were, and they were more interested in keeping their fence and a couple of trees than they were in preventing that problem. But I will tell you that there are, if you wanted to look at all of the counterexamples in town, most of them are old and are problematic. And town engineer and I are trying to work through that list slowly but surely to correct most of those to get back to a usable easement that won't require really serious damage to property if we ever had a backup in that area. It's much better to take those things out ahead of a problem than in the middle of a problem.
And my understanding on this particular one is a majority of it is right-of-way or alongside of asphalted roads, as opposed to kind of running between property lines and different
And
things.
the width really has to do as much with the width of the equipment we use to do
understand
this
that.
than anything else.
Right.
So, I have a question. Not only is there a sewer line running across the front of my property, there's also the power line's buried there, natural gas, cable, and water. So, how much is, chopping down all these trees gonna disrupt? Because if you have to grind the stumps, these are all right there together.
Yeah, and all of that will have to obviously be marked before any of that work occurs.
Sorry.
Should they remove the stumps when they cut the
Depending on where they are, the answer is likely yes, particularly if they are over any of those easements, existing easements. Some of the power companies don't ground them, they just cut them off. But for most of us, when we're having to dig as deep as sewer lines go, we typically have to take the stumps out.
How deep are the sewer lines?
Depends on what the topography is at that spot. If you're at the bottom of a hill, it's probably pretty shallow. If you're at the top of a hill, it's probably pretty deep.
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and I would just ask, keep us informed. I know this is.
Yeah, again, it's a
moving forward.
project you're going to see again come budget discussion.
Just,
The deciduous trees to me would be the more
Right, somebody in our neighborhood mentioned that the pine trees keep regrowing. Longleaf pines do not regrow. Even if you just left the stump there, it's not gonna sprout stump. There are some American hollies that are native to the area as well, in all this mix, and they will regrow. So if you don't take their root system out, they'll come back.
really good. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and appreciate your concern for your neighborhood and for Southern Pines, so thank you. Any other public comments before we move on? All right, we'll go back. Did y'all have a chance to look at what Beth sent you, the sediment?
5B has been added, and we've reviewed it.
Only question I had, Mac, was I did not compare that against the document we looked at that the county had approved. Is it fairly in line, if not exactly in line, largely?
Is word for word, except changing County of Moore to Town of Southern Pines.
Okay, thank you. I didn't do that level of comparison, so thank you.
Word for word.
Okay. Are there any other questions or a motion to approve the consent agenda with A and B now added, noting that A does not include January 14th?
I move that we approve the consent agenda, including but not limited to 5B, which has been added, which is the statement of support regarding sedimentation and an owner's ability to pursue legal enforcement of sedimentation violations.
My second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. We will move on to our legislative hearing regarding annexation. Open that public hearing, and are you speaking to us on behalf of the town, BJ?
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. BJ Grieve with the Town of Southern Pines. I'm here on behalf of the town, just very briefly summarizing the request for annexation. There is a parcel located at the corner of Southwest Broad Street and Henson Street, pulled up on the map here. Let me zoom in just one more, please. There you go. Subject parcel. Got all cattywampus. There we go. Just leave it right there. There. Subject parcel is right here. You can see there's a sewer line that comes in right here and butts up against property. There's water in the street in front. And the subject property is not presently connected to sewer. It is on individual septic, and therefore they would like to connect because they see some of their neighbors connecting to sewer. In order to connect, they need to annex. And this is the public hearing for that process. You have any questions of staff?
Any,
Thank you.
is anybody here on behalf of the petitioner for this action? All right. Any discussion, questions, or motions?
Can you, Mr. Green, can you give me some marker in my brain so you is this near something that you can get? I'm having a hard time visual, or can I see on the screen where this is? Can you show me a picture?
I can pull up Google Maps.
Down Saunders Boulevard, Austin Ridge, back toward,
Behind the barbecue place,
Smithfield, near there.
Smithfield?
near there.
And it's right on the edge of what has been the town property now, and.
Yeah, it's
and-
contiguous to what is already annexed in.
And infrastructure is in place, yeah, okay.
So the property where Golf Augusta is located, just off the highway,
Right.
if you were to pull in there, I don't think you can connect through here, but it is right behind that area. I can drop you down right here in front of the house that's requesting annexation, but it still may not do any good to get your bearings.
That
This
helps.
is the Golf
Thank you.
Augusta property. You can come out through the back right there.
Right.
And so this is the extension of Southwest Broad. This is Henson, and the subject property looking to annex is this one right here.
I'm not meaning to be a smart aleck, but are they about to lose all their trees because they're about to annex in?
I don't know the answer to that question.
No, we're looking to tie onto an existing sewer main.
Right.
So it would
Gonna cut down.
purely be their lateral. No, we're not cutting anything down. The sewer lane's already there.
Okay. Promise?
I will not promise what they may do in getting a line to their house, but the town is not taking their tree down.
You promise the town won't take it down. Okay, great, thank you.
I move to adopt an ordinance approving voluntary annexation request AX-03-24 for the property as defined in the submitted written meets and bounds description, and to have the ordinance effective immediately.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, BJ. We'll move on to item 7. This is a quasi-judicial hearing regarding Bethesda Road Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat. Before we open the public hearing and start this, I'll just remind everybody this is a quasi-judicial hearing, which comes with it a little more formalities where expert testimony is necessary, and we are to use our discretion as it's competent, relevant evidence as to what's stated here today. And just so, Mac, are you going to read the conflicts or not conflicts, and then
Yes,
we'll
sir.
move forward? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Does any member of council have a fixed opinion prior to this hearing that is not susceptible to change?
No.
Has any member of council had ex parte communications about this matter with anybody other than a staff member?
No.
Does any member of council have a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person?
No.
Does any member of council have a financial interest in the outcome of this matter?
No.
Who is the applicant?
Carolyn Scott here is, Laura Scott is the executor. I'm Tim Carpenter with OKC.
You're their agent? Do you wish to challenge any member of council on the basis of conflict of interest? Record says no.
Thank you. And Beth, would you like to swear in anybody? Anybody who's going to speak as to this matter, please stand up and be sworn in by Beth.
Do you swear in or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth,
All right, thank you. All right, James, are you speaking for the planning?
James Broadwell, Southern Pines Planning Office. I'll first start with entering in the staff report as Exhibit A and the presentation as Exhibit B. And I'll be presenting to you the staff analysis for the Bethesda Road subdivision, which intends to divide a roughly 5.8 acre parent tract into 4 residential lots. LKC is the applicant, the agent representing the property owner. And the reason you all are seeing this as a major before you today and not an administrative minor is because this property fronts Bethesda Road, which is a minor collector roadway. And anytime we add driveways to collectors, arterials, and so forth, it requires a major review just in the event there's any safety or design implications. So I'll just quickly go over an area overview, the preliminary plat itself, 2 items for your awareness, and then 1 condition of approval. The subject property is that orange outline you see right there. It's about a mile south of downtown, just to the west of East Indiana and Bethesda Road intersection, just across the street from Sandhurst Park as another just reference point for you. The property is zoned RS2, which is 20,000 square foot lots, which is the same as its surrounding neighborhood, minus Sandhurst Park, which is zoned FRR. That's the preliminary plat itself. The existing house that you saw in the overhead shot is on Lot 1, and the new lots are 2, 3, and 4 to its west. Each lot will be between 1 and 2 acres. And those new driveway accesses that you see there on the west side, in lieu of the whole minor collector issue, we did have the engineering department look at this thoroughly, and they did not find any major concerns. The elevation drop between, if you're traveling from east to west, is roughly 50 feet, 35-mile-per-hour road, and your sightline visibility stays between 300 and 350 feet at any point along that roadway. Because the applicant is going to space driveways 150 to 200 feet apart, they really don't foresee any issues with those driveways being added. Next item for your awareness is a right-of-way dedication. This is a little odd because the subject property's deed and deed description predates Southern Pines annexing this area in the 1970s. That deed description takes it all the way out to the center line of Bethesda Road. And the applicant wants to dedicate this for a couple reasons, more than likely. One, there is a sanitary sewer easement you see in the roadway, and that will no longer be within their property according to the deed. And also in talking to a few prospective buyers of these lots, having the right-of-way extend all the way into, the boundary extend into the right-of-way presents issues with insurance companies and being liable for whatever may happen out in that space. So that actually benefits the property owners in the future for them not having that space, and it just cleans it up for the town as well. And for our proposed condition of approval, which you have heard me talk about many times about comp plan policies 4.9 and 4.10, preserving the natural character of our town and minimizing tree loss during development. Those trees you see there are obviously emblematic of that natural character, and in making sure this subdivision stays in conformance with criterion 1 in the comprehensive plan, they really should be retained. I also want to point out that all major subdivisions are required to have street trees. And by preserving these, not only do we bring this subdivision in line with the comprehensive plan, but meet that requirement as well. And so for that reason, we as staff recommend this condition of preserving all trees 10-inch diameter and greater within that front setback. Also, an advantage of being in the front setback is it doesn't affect the actual buildable area of these lots either, which just doesn't present an issue for the applicant in that sense. And we really do appreciate the applicant being willing to work with us on this. They're aware of this condition. They're quite fine with it. I'm sure Tim might have a couple of notes about it here in a second as well. But with that, our recommendation is approval with that one condition of retaining all of those trees in the front setback 10 inches and greater to make sure that this major subdivision aligns with the comp plan. I do have the actual verbatim condition text if you all like to take a look at that as well.
Kevin.
It's for James.
On the slide that with the blue box, so depicting the right-of-way dedication, It's not just in the blue box, is it? It's all of that along the road?
Correct, yes, sir. It's parallels that whole section.
Approximately how many
alongside
feet off the side of the road is that right of way?
Say around 20 feet or so?
Okay, so this
20,
is
30
where I'm
feet.
getting the question relevant to the condition. Are there trees in this new right-of-way dedication?
There are some, and those trees are also town-owned.
Well, they
as
will
being
be as part of this dedication.
Right.
So that would be the street trees, though, that in a normal development. So this is where I have conflict with the condition, is that there are trees, I don't know how many trees, in this right-of-way dedication. And when I read the text, going back to planning board, it specifically talks about street trees, the planning requirement of street trees of 1 per 30 feet. And then from that, it's morphed into the entire setback. And I don't necessarily agree that there won't be conflict with the tree, with the building of the house. Because in essence, you've enlarged your setback. If there's a tree on the setback and the property owner wishes to build on the setback, those are going to conflict. And if it's 10 inches, it, according to the condition, can't be removed. So then it forces them to move that house further. It enlarges the setback. Maybe unintentionally, but it does. Because you wouldn't build a house right up on a tree. So that's the conflict I have with the condition. I do want to work on some of the verbiage on the condition, but that's where, when I read this, I started at the beginning of this, I was like, okay, yeah, the street trees out by the road. And then, but nowhere early on was it ever contemplated that it go the entire setback. So I want to get the genesis or the rationale between how did we get to the setback being included as they can't remove the trees?
Sure. So the original genesis of it was conforming with the comprehensive plan and really maximizing the preservation of those mature trees that are right there along the roadway. We just wanted to point out the street tree as sort of, we haven't delineated exactly how many are required for that 1 per 30 feet, but by preserving everything within that setback as well, that requirement is certainly met. So it's an added advantage.
So how do you track that? Let's say a house doesn't get built there for 20 years.
It will reflect on the actual final plat. There'll be a note.
So it's
in
not a
the,
deed restriction.
Correct. It is just reflected on the plat.
And that's something that's, I guess, okay. And then secondly, was the applicant provided a copy of the tree protection standards?
You just mean as far as what's in the UDO?
It's written into the condition is that they're going to have to comply with the tree protection standards. I just wonder, just out of curiosity, were they ever given a copy of that? Do they know what the tree protection standards are? Do they know what they're agreeing to, is really my question.
With LKC very often, and we talk section 4313 with them and tree protection fencing standoff on numerous projects.
And he's here too. We'll let Mr. Carpenter speak to that as well.
I was more talking about the applicant. I mean, he's the agent, but that's fine too. He can speak to them, but I didn't know if here's my point about this. And it kind of goes back to like the written decision question I have. When we're writing in conditions and we're referring to things that are in our ordinance, I think it's incumbent upon us to provide that information to a condition that they're agreeing to, and that we document that we're providing you this, so that when they're agreeing to a condition, that we've provided them a copy of that condition that they're agreeing to, so that in the future, when they come back and say, I didn't ever agree to that. And so I just think it's probably good dotting I and crossing Ts to provide that, because it's a specific standard mentioned in the condition, that we provide that for them for their review. Because I assume that they've agreed to this condition.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
If I may add to that, North Carolina general statute requires that an applicant consent in writing to conditions. And so we correspond with the applicants in advance and we work on the language of these conditions and send it back and forth. And it's part of coming up with staff's recommendation is making sure that they're aware of the condition, making sure they consent to the condition. And then to your point, this is not in reference to the new tree protection ordinance that has
know.
not yet been adopted. This
Right.
isn't just in reference to the standards within the UDO for standard tree protection fencing and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm aware of what it's about. But in that back and forth, if we're going to mention standards, we should probably have a part of that, what that standard is. When you're talking about, when they're agreeing to a specific standard, they should know what the standard they're agreeing to is all.
We can administer that. My question would be, if we send a draft of the condition to the applicant and they say, yep, we're okay with this condition, and they send that back, say, we're okay with
That's
the
it.
condition, and that has taken place, is there something in addition to that you would like us to do?
No, but you implied there was a back and forth during the discussion of this condition. So as a part of that back and forth, just whatever standard that is actually being referred to in the condition is something that they've seen.
You want to make sure that there's notice of the condition to the applicant.
Correct.
Is all you're asking for, and it sounds like
They consent to it in writing, that would be that.
happened. And,
Have they seen it?
Yes, and they've consented to it in writing.
right,
To them.
And we'd have to do that under statute before we
Right.
can bring it to you. Before you can agree to it, they have to consent to it in writing.
right. So it's a consented to agreement, and yes, they have had notice, but your point is well taken, particularly.
And as if it references 4 point whatever, that they also have a copy of 4 point whatever.
Correct.
I understand that. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yeah.
Would it help to, because in this condition, we don't actually delineate the tree protection fence standoff distance. We just reference some of the UDO
So,
policy.
so I think if they had a copy of the tree protection standard, and you said in here, tree protection standard, and in your file, you had you had given them the tree protection standard, that's sufficient. I don't know that we have to reference exactly the point. It's just about notification of what they're agreeing to. Because everybody's not going to be like Tim. It's going to be a homeowner. And that's the people that you have to give them everything that they're agreeing to, because sometimes they don't know what they're agreeing to. And they say, tree protection, oh, that seems benign. And then 15 years from now, tree protection standards are robust.
That makes sense.
So,
The tree protection standards as of today, when the consent condition is agreed to.
yes,
Right, I understand, and I agree.
yeah,
So notice of that's great, but it sounds like you've done that.
no.
They have actually, Tim, you're going to be heard in a minute. You want to cut this off somehow, magically? Okay. I understand your concern. Can we wait and hear from Tim and make sure that that's an issue?
Well, yeah, I'm sure he understands it.
Right.
My question, it's not just for this application.
Do his clients, does the applicant understand? I
Right.
understand what your point
Yeah.
is, yeah.
There's one final thing I want to get on the condition, and then I'm done. So regarding I have a little bit of an issue with all, whenever you use the word all existing trees in the setback, and I go back to that conflict where someone buys a lot, they want to build their house on the setback, and then there's a tree on the setback, well, those are going to conflict. So I think the remedy here is where we talk about excluding areas required for driveways and/or utility easements and/or home construction and appurtenances thereto, whatever, sidewalks. So,
You can't build a house in a setback, though.
Right.
no. So you're outside the setback, but you're at the setback. You can build a house on the setback, and then there's a tree on the setback. So you can't, those two are going to conflict. So in the situation, in the situation where there's a tree, believe it or not, there's a lot of folks that build on the setback because they want more backyard. And then they have 30 feet of a setback, and then they have the right-of-way that looks like your yard. And so they will build on that. So I just don't want to create a situation where we are, in essence, or effectively, enlarging our setback because there's a tree on the setback that now pushes their house back another 10 feet, if they so choose to build at the setback. The simple solution is where we give the exclusions of where a tree can be removed, is that we add the language like we do for driveways and utilities or construction of the home, if it conflicts with the construction of the home.
And I would agree with you, except for the exception of construction of a home, because I think that it's really clear from the consent agreement, consent condition, that they know that, or they should know that.
Yeah, for purposes of this one, y'all spent a good bit of time hammering this out to the satisfaction of both sides. I would like to hear from the
yeah, I
applicant
agree.
before we try to consider maybe modifying or not. So hold that. We'll
Right.
ask.
So I just have
ask
one
them.
follow-up question here, and it really does confuse me because I'm not a developer and this doesn't come to me quickly, but the 20,000 square feet that are required on the lot size equals, Google says equals .459, almost a half an acre. And these are 1 acre lots that are deep too. So there's going to be a fair amount of property behind a 30-foot consented to.
Correct,
setback,
yes, ma'am.
Right,
They-
right.
Our
Okay,
RS2 allows for much tighter density, and these lots are
Right,
much
yeah.
less dense than what they could do, potentially.
thanks.
I am going to ask this question before we bring Mr. Carpenter up, because I think I know where Councilman Goodman is headed with this, but I wanted to ask the question so you can think through the language. And when you include things like driveways and sewer lines and whatever, that's kind of it's going to go through the tree. It's very clear it's a conflict. If I want to build my house at the setback, as you're talking about, is there a standard you would suggest for, and is a tree a conflict to that?
think
Is it
there's a
5
building-
feet, is it 10 feet? You see where I might not want it within 20 foot of the house, and all of a sudden, because I'm at the line, I've taken it out. I'm looking at it from how would staff deal with an individual
I think
coming in.
it's 5 feet, I think, but.
Okay, and I didn't know if there was a standard, or
Yeah.
but you see where I'm headed. If
That's
you're gonna,
5 feet's
if
pretty
you're gonna
close.
do that language, I think you need to be precise about what building the house means versus things that clearly are gonna go through the tree.
And
25 feet, and I'm building a house, and I consider that to be within conflict with
is
the
a-
house. Yes, that's not what I mean.
I know
Whereas-
what you mean. I just want,
Right.
if you're thinking through language,
your point, but this is particular as to just these lots. We're not writing code that's going to impact any other land but for
Right.
these three, which is why I would like to hear from the petitioner.
lots.
So
Thanks.
are you,
Yes, ma'am.
before James sits down, any questions from council? Yeah, petitioner now. Mr. Carpenter, if you'd like to come up, please.
Good evening. Tim Carpenter with LKC Engineering, 140 Alcoched Court, Aberdeen, North Carolina. So I'm hearing what Councilman Goodman is saying. Obviously, in this particular situation, it's probably not as pertinent because the lots are deep, they're very large. I guess we sent an exhibit that you can see there on the screen. This is from a survey some time ago where we did a tree survey, but these are 12-inch and larger trees. So we haven't located all the 10. So the language that Councilman Goodman referenced, we mentioned this, I thought, in planning board, although it was just, they did not have a quorum, we discussed it. So driveway cuts, utility cuts, if you look on lot 2, that's a fairly narrow front, kind of a flag lot. So we're going to, there's obviously no 12-inch trees there, but the driveway's going to take up most of that. Water sewer connections are going to take up probably the rest of it. The applicant, or the applicant though, Mr. Scott, is fine with the 10-inch standard as it relates to being consistent with the comp plan and tree preservation ordinance. I did have one question. I assume relative to your question, we would comply with the current, as of today, tree standard ordinance. If somebody else comes in 10 years from now and the ordinance change, we're still consistent with that. So what probably we could do on the final plat is put probably the exact language. Is that reasonable?
Of the current standard.
Of the current standard, yeah.
Very, very reasonable. That would normally fall under vesting anyways, and administrators should know that. But in case, just to be abundantly clear, yeah, that would be vested in the regulations in place at the time it was approved.
Okay, all right, so we can add that note in the notations on the final plat. Outside of that, the right-of-way dedication is, as James mentioned, is to kind of clean up the right-of-way issue that kind of doesn't exist now. So the new tree protection standard would be applicable from the new right-of-way back to the setback line. Obviously, we will keep the trees on the street that give us the street tree credit that we need. So, outside of that, I'm here to answer.
It sounds like all of the trees, including the setback, count towards your street tree credit, the way I read it.
For the most part, and I had made mention in in the planning board meeting, I think the paper quoted me as saying we'd like to trim out the gnarly vegetation, probably a poor choice of words, but we would like to be able to trim out the weeds and undergrowth. So if you have these nice 18-inch trees, you look through that canopy and you see your house, you get a little curb appeal, so.
So kind of where I started kind of struggling with it was that in my mind, I was viewing this as kind of a waiver of a street tree requirement if you kept the trees in the setback.
Which I believe is in the current UDO, as long as it's within 30 feet of edge of pavement, you can count that towards the street tree requirement.
Right,
So,
right.
so we're kind of killing two birds with one
Right.
stone, but we're also complying with the comp plan and the tree preservation guidance. And we are in a major subdivision, so we're in a negotiating point, and we're fine with that. These lots are large. I understand if this is a 5,000 square foot lot and you need to build a little bit prouder to the front. These are probably not going to be that way. These are going to be more in keeping with the surroundings where the houses are set back. As Ms. Peterson said, these are 1 acre to almost 2 acre lots. Certainly not out of character with surroundings if you look down the street view, so.
So I have a quick question that I should be able to read from the drawing, but I can't. That's not my skill set.
Okay.
Can you tell me the width of the flag pole on the flag lot?
Yes. Get my different glasses on.
Okay, great.
I don't wear,
How wide is it?
54 feet.
Okay. Okay, so regardless of, if you found a bunch of 10-inch trees there, there might be a little side preservation of 10-inch trees.
Possibly. yes, ma'am.
Possibly, but
Yeah.
possibly,
I just don't, it'll be on the plat, so.
Right.
Save for a driveway cut, utility cuts, power,
Right.
et cetera, the rest of it will be left by virtue of the plat, the language on the plat.
okay. And I'd like to take notice of the fact that I'm looking forward to the day that one of the UDO ordinances uses the language gnarly vegetation.
Bad
I like
night, Ms.
that,
Peterson.
thanks.
For
I'm familiar with gnarly.
Thinking about my younger
vegetation.
days.
as to your negotiations with staff, you're fully informed and satisfied with all of the requirements and standards as to these lots and the trees.
Yes, but I wouldn't mind that issue or the language of driveway, maybe it did say that. Oh, it did say it. Driveways, utility access, okay, yes.
Excluded.
All right, okay. Thank you. Does anybody have anything further?
No.
Any questions for Mr. Carpenter?
Going to be amazing building lots.
They will
They're going
be.
to be beautiful.
That Mr. Carpenter's exhibit showing the trees be entered into the record as Exhibit C, please.
Yes. Thank you, BJ. This is a public hearing, and so I'll open it up. Is anybody here from the public that would like to speak, that is qualified to speak at the quasi-judicial hearing? Seeing none. Anything further from council before we close the public hearing?
Nope.
I'll move to close the public hearing. Second.
I think you just closed, I can
just
second
closed.
it. I think you just closed it though, but we're all good. Okay.
All right, any council discussion or motions or comments?
Are we going along with Councilman Goodman's request, or have we kind of settled that it's already been?
As to these, you made some good points, and I appreciate it. I think staff heard that, and in the future, if it's a small lot, they will kind of remember that. For these purposes, applicant has stated that they're comfortable with it, they understand what they're getting into, so I don't feel the need to modify beyond what the current condition is.
Adopt attachment 1 of the staff report as drafted as findings of fact regarding the proposed preliminary plat, MAPP-05-24.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve the preliminary plat, MAPP-05-24. With the following additional
Condition,
condition. Condition 1 is left as listed and agreed to by the applicant, contained in our agenda this evening.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Thank you, staff.
Councilman Goodman, to your point, what will happen now is this will go and we will continue correspondence with the applicant to let them know what happened. Then we will bring this back in the form of a written decision. And that written decision, we had that conversation at the work session about that written decision, which will reflect this condition. And the council can verify to make sure the language is the same here. And then under the law, that has to be provided to them. It has to be emailed, and we have to put an affidavit in the file that it was provided to them and any other party that was interested in knowing about it who had requested in writing for a copy of the written decision. So there's a bunch of paperwork that happens to make sure, to get at, I think, your concern, just to have that transparency of communication. So
Written proof that there was notice. Right, yeah, that's great, that's great.
the notice, both of the fact that notice has to be provided, a copy of the written decision has to be delivered to the landowner, the applicant's authorized agents, as well as any other party who has expressed an interest in receiving a copy in writing. And that does happen from time to time. And so,
Thank you, guys.
And I'm looking forward to Mr. Carpenter saying that he's with the engineering firm located in Southern Pines. It's going to be great,
Soon.
really soon.
Thank you, guys. All right, moving on, 8A. Mason, is this, inform us on the updates to the vehicular travel through historic district update. Thank you.
All right, good evening. Mason Maddox, town staff, currently working as a planner. Council will recall that we have been discussing a proposal to amend Code of Ordinances 70.07, which regulates skateboarding and like activity. For those of you just now following on this issue, town staff was asked by town management back in September, October of 2024 to begin investigating this issue as a means of allowing skateboarders to access the recently opened Elaine T. Bailey Skate Park by means of skating device. As the current ordinance stands, doing so is not permitted. One is expected to carry their skateboard to the park or put it in their trunk and drive to the park. So that is what prompted this discussion. I'll note the term for everyone else here tonight that the term skating device is a collective term referring to broader non-motorized and self-propelled activities such as roller skating, riding scooters, I'll dare say, and the like. Council, our discussion at January work session brought two subjects to staff's attention, the first being children aged 10 and over, and the second issue being sidewalks around downtown park. There seemed to be a large interest in protecting these spaces for skateboarders, not so much from skateboarders. So here you will see the proposal as most recently updated, especially noted in highlight. A provision has been added that for those 10 and under, skating devices may be ridden upon all sidewalks. Per council's request, no provision was added as to with a parent or with a legal guardian, kept that out. Similarly, sidewalks in the local historic district around downtown park have been carved out of this. I'll show you on the next page. We'll look at that graphic. I created this to sort of be a cheat sheet. The red squares indicate where skateboarding and skating devices would be prohibited for those 11 and up. Once again, having carved out downtown park. I'll let you take a minute to look at it. We're good, moving on. All right. You'll note in your packet that amendment option B was drafted by myself last week. I had some pushback from Police Chief Polidori, rightfully so, so let's come back to that if you would like. Otherwise, we'll keep our attention solely on option A.
Was the pushback mainly that it's going to be really hard to card whether a kid's 10 or 11?
The pushback was actually not over this one, but it was over my proposal to regulate speed, and there was pushback over the issues of what walking speed would be.
So that would be option B. He had a problem with option B.
Correct.
And as enforcement goes, he was more comfortable with option A, which is a bit more cumbersome.
That is correct. The option you see before you, option A, which discusses age, 10 and over, or 10 and under and 11 and over, was approved by Police Chief Polidori and legal counsel.
Yeah. Do you have a strong opinion? I know that you're scared of what we may say to you next. and I would be certainly reluctant to express it if I had a strong opinion and I were you, but do you have a strong opinion between A and B, and why? If you do.
My opinion is always to follow what law enforcement is most comfortable with, because at the end of the day, the Code of Ordinances is not zoning. It is not what planning enforces. I do some code enforcement in the historic district, but ultimately this is regulated by the police powers. And so that department is what needs to be comfortable with it. So
So the police chief is more comfortable with option A, which I agree with him. It's mighty vague if you say that a vehicle or a skating device needs to be moving no more than the equivalent of a normal walking speed. That I can see where that would be a problem. I also see a problem where we start trying to card 10 and 11-year-olds. But I think that it's something where I think perfection is the oppressor, and we probably need to go ahead and adopt something and then be big enough people to admit we made a mistake if it creates a problem. So it sounds like to me that if if Chief is interested in trying out option A, that would be where I would suggest we.
Yeah, I think y'all spent a lot of time on this, and
Yeah,
we
you
could
have.
spend
Bless you.
forever nitpicking these various issues. Thank you for getting it to where it is. And if it's met with the approval of our police chief, then I'm good with your option A from the February 11th date in the packet.
thank you. 90% of the time is our goal with these things. Of course, as you very well said, we can't plan for every situation, but we can always go back and amend it, though that may be painful at times. I also want to draw your attention that per legal counsel and Police Chief Polidori's recommendation, item 7 was added. That's the printout you have. And that simply states how this provision will be enforced. Just a little addition from your staff report.
The attorney, I'm unfamiliar with what the penalty would be provided under statute
Go to the last.
10.99A.
Civil citation.
Okay. $50 is a lot for a 10-year-old, but I get it. It could be on a sliding scale.
We can find their parents.
Kevin.
Okay, I like it.
Approve, I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Approve the amendments to Code of Ordinance 70.07 regarding the use of non-motorized wheeled vehicles on roadways to be option A, including number 7, which speaks to the penalty involved for a violation of this ordinance that's contained in our agenda packet.
Thank you.
I second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mason. I appreciate that, and thank you for y'all's hard work on this.
Yeah, I think Mason gets a perseverance award for what we put through on this one.
All right.
That's well done.
There it is.
Board, we've got some, I guess, 2, an ETJ and an in-town planning board appointments. Is that correct, Town Manager?
One of each available.
And I think it's important to note that Mr. Speck is with us tonight,
Note he
and
was here.
hopefully everybody's met him, and
Mr. Speck, you were one of the ones for the in-town spot, is that correct? And then did we only have one ETJ applicant, is that correct?
That's all you have at this point, yes.
All right, I guess do we do them together or separate? I guess it doesn't matter. Is there a motion for the ETJ one since it's the only one?
Oh, for the ETJ one, okay.
so is that Scribner?
Yes.
So I make a motion that we select Jason Scribner as an ETJ representative for the planning board, effective immediately.
I second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Yep. Any opposed? That motion carries. And then,
Is the other position effective immediately also?
yes, because,
Is
yeah,
it, okay.
Because the last appointment you made, remember you pushed it off due to the gentleman's upcoming vacation or whatever, so it
Okay.
is immediately available.
motion for the in-town position.
I move to appoint Andrew Speck to fulfill. It's not a remaining term, is it?
Yeah, actually, in that case, it would be.
Fulfill the remaining term for the
Herrera, yes.
Mr. Herrera on the planning board.
Second.
All right, motion second. All those approve? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Speck.
right.
Thank you.
For your willingness to serve.
Thanks for being here, and thank you for your willingness to serve Southern Province Planning Board.
And meetings never go this fast. It's important that you understand.
That's it. Is there a motion to adjourn? Aye.
He wanted out here at 7. I can tell. He wanted out here at 7.
8 minutes.
Give him a rubber gavel if he does this again.
That's funny. I can tell. He was like,
That's okay.
We got 2 buried in the tree.